Disagreements is one thing, but it seems like more than disagreements, we're having polarization. And with polarization, it causes almost pandemonium. It causes so much division, and that division, I think, also brings persecution. Well, today we're going to talk about a few issues that we've seen, and I think we, as especially as conservative Christians, I believe we're going to see more and more, not only opposition, but persecution. The question is, are we ready for it? Being a homesteader, being a prepper, being a homeschooling big family of 8, there's a lot of things that probably play against us as being opposing forces to some of the normal narratives that this world has given us. But today we're going to talk about some things that should make you think. And when we start thinking and say, you know what, this may be that time where, in generality, the opposition will face persecution. And the only way we're going to rise above that is we start gaining wisdom and seeking what we can do to fix it. Let's jump into it. Today's video starts right now. And you ever wonder? Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so much for being here today. To me, this video is a little bit more eye-opening, because when I start reading some of these stories, sometimes I get overwhelmed. Sometimes I just let them just kind of roll off of me because I know we live in a crazy world. But then there's sometimes it's like, man, it just hits me like a ton of bricks. So we're going to talk about some stories today. Not only is it fearful as a conservative, when you throw in the fact that you're a conservative Christian, I believe we're going to really face that persecution that we were talking about in the intro. So let's jump into these stories. Before we do, if you're new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, that's okay. Of course, you know our goal is to always talk prepping, sustainability, and homesteading. But we also need to talk real life events that's going on that can impact every aspect of our life and our families. So let's jump into these stories. So we're going to talk about some of the things in the world that's going on that's we're seeing more persecution in areas that we may have not seen. And then also we're going to start seeing how the West and America is starting to do the same things for conservative as an opposition, but also Christians as an opposition. A few weeks ago, I don't know if you saw it, but the World Bank pulled funds and was not going to help an African country because of some of the stances they took for morals and values. So you can look that story up. But the one thing I want to bring up, dealing with the world news, dealing with the persecution, is did you see the story about China trying to rewrite parts of the Bible? We also saw this with AI-generated technology trying to do the same thing, making the Bible more appealing to more people. So of course, as a Christian, we know that's wrong. And so we're seeing a maneuvering of churches, and we've talked about this before, where the churches are losing strength because they're not living out what they're supposed to be doing. We're seeing our morals and values breakdown of the family because the family's not any different than any other family. And as a Christian, I believe we're not perfect, but we should try to do as much as we can to be better. And now we're seeing almost a chance to rewrite Scripture, which is absolutely heresy, by the way, but that's dangerous. So if we don't see the written word of God and we don't hold dear to that, especially as a Christian, I believe we're going to see a watered down version of what the world thinks of God and Christianity. Now, the kicker of that is, just like the World Bank pushing against, I think it was Uganda, and also just like this story, the more you see pushing against the true one God and also the Bible, the more persecution will come on the world stage. Question is, are we ready for that to take place? Now, this is not the West yet. We'll talk about the West and America. If we're in those African countries who are trying to stand up for their morals and values against all this ideology that's been pushed on us in these agendas, do you think that they are strong enough economically to be able to do that? I hope they are. And even if they're not, I hope they do stand strong. You know, of course, the Chinese Communist Party and the way the Bible is viewed in a lot of Asia is bad, and we see a lot of persecution there. The question is, what are we doing to help? It's amazing that we want to fight wars, but instead of doing that, we should be trying to help people like that, and that's what breaks my heart. Now let's talk about some of the stories in America, because this is what really hits home to me, is what's happening in the West, because it's right at our back door. Now, before we talk about the Christian issues or the persecution on Christians, let's just talk about the opposition as conservatives. When was there ever a time that you should have to ask permission to the government to go fishing, to own a property, to start a business, to hunt, to even get married. And remember, to protest, it's amazing how one side can do it, the other can't. Or to sell food. We talked about this, like raw dairy milk and how we're not able to sell it. So if we see those things that tend to lean towards freedoms and liberties, which tends to lean towards conservatism, that's the things that are getting pushed against. And that's the part that, are we going to just kowtow and not stand up and not do more things to work together to have our freedoms? Let's talk about some quotes right quick that I think are huge from our founding fathers. Benjamin Franklin once said, "Make yourself sheep and the wolves will eat you." I think we're to a point where we can't just let everybody walk over us again, because if we allow people to just keep walking over us and keep walking over us and keep walking over us, we're never going to ever get up, and we're never going to get through the persecution. We're going to just take it. And I think when, especially conservatives and Republicans, we want to play nice when it comes to issues. Well, we can't worry about that anymore. I believe that's the problem with why the world is the way it is in the West, especially, and all these agendas are getting passed, because conservatives and these elected Republicans who are not really having backbone are not standing up for the values and morals that made us who we are as a nation. This is a good quote from James Madison. It says, "Oppressors can tyrannize only when they achieve a standing army, an enslaved press," meaning their control of the press, "and a disarmed populace." All the things that we've worked so hard for in the last however many years that we've had our freedoms and independence, all the wars that have been fought by the wonderful people who are willing to give their lives for. And we look now, and we're looking at this regulatory body and this agenda-based body that is really oppressing the people who don't go with this agenda that's being pushed. And this, for this administration that's in power now, it's like we can't do anything to stop what's going on. And the Republicans in Congress are definitely not doing anything. So us as individuals, the ones who are conservative, the ones who are wanting their freedoms to always be there, what are we to do? Here's a few more stories that's eye-opening. There was a Christian nonprofit group that had their banking with Bank of America for years. But because of their ideology, their morals and values, they just became debanked. Now, the question is why? They can make excuses all they want, but ultimately it was because of their faith. Another story, the state of Massachusetts bans Catholic couple from fostering children due to their beliefs and how they don't support certain ideologies. So do you see just these few little stories, how our freedom and liberty and the way that we say we still have independence and freedom and liberty, do you see how over-regulation and the agendas that have been pushed by a lot of these administrations, and including our Republicans not standing up for us as conservatives, and especially conservative Christians, do you see how those few little stories right there are just the start? Do you see the story today about the Gadsden flag, about the kid that was in school and he had a "Don't Tread on Me" flag on his backpack, and then he all of a sudden got taken to the principal's office and I think ended up getting suspended, getting taken out of school over a patch? However, we have teachers showing every kind of thing that you can imagine on TikTok and on YouTube and on Facebook, and all those things they allow into the school system. The woke books they allow into the school system because it's part of the agenda, it's part of the ideology. However, this one kid who had a Gadsden flag on his backpack gets in trouble. Those little slow things, the non-adoption, the non-fostering, the debanking, the fact that our businesses don't have some of the freedoms, the regulatory bodies on some of the things that we had held dear to, such as being able to sell our goods, being able to help someone. No, we have to have license for all that. We have to have some kind of permits for all that. We're going in with two Thomas Jefferson quotes. I thought that were really good. The first one is, he said, "I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery." Now, I don't think that anyone wants polarization to a point of persecution. Nobody wants that. But sadly, if we're not willing to be the lions instead of the sheep, if we're not willing to stand up and have a backbone and to say how we as Christians believe and how conservatives should have freedoms and liberties always, and if we don't have the of course, leadership, we've got to be the ones to stand up. Would you rather be the one who is pushing against the crowd, who is trying to work as hard as they can to see freedom and have freedom? We may end up having persecution, especially in the coming weeks, months, and years. When election year comes around next year, it's even going to be worse. But guess what? If you do what they say and you go along with all this ideology, they'll leave you alone. But you're just going to be a slave to whatever they want you to be. You're going to do whatever they want you to do. They're going to provide you the food, they're going to provide you the medicine, they're going to provide you the work, the money. You're going to be a slave to the government or overregulation. Thomas Jefferson said, when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there's liberty. Now, I don't want anything to ever transpire, but I do believe, I hope it never gets to that. But when we see these little stories, these little news snippets, these little things across the world, and then now in the West where the persecution's real, you're seeing it. Look at Jordan Peterson in Canada. They're wanting to revoke his licensure to practice in psychology, all because he does not bend to the narrative. So he's got to go through all this training. That is too big a government. That is loss of freedom. And when people say it's happening everywhere else, it's not happening in America. It's happening more and more in America. Look at the little boy. Look at the couple who wanted to adopt. And think in your own towns, your own states, the persecution that you're seeing and you will continue to see. The question is, we cannot just be sheep and just follow whatever they tell us. We have to be willing to stand up. And even though we're not perfect, there's nothing that we've done is perfect. But I do believe we can turn it around. First of all, of course, we need a revival. But we need leaders who are willing to support us and stand up with us. We need more influencers. We need more people who are willing to say, this is not right. We've got to change this around. And then we have to be willing to stand up to maybe even the persecution and the opposition that comes. Guys, I hope this video can encourage you to take a stand. You know, the food security, preparation, the sustainable living, the homesteading, the way we try to prepare ourselves, it's important. But we have to make sure that we are psychologically, we're spiritually, we're mentally preparing ourselves for some of the battles that we probably will face. And I hope that you're up for the task. I think it's going to take people who want liberty, people who want freedom, and people who love their God, and who are willing to not just kowtow to all the pressure that we're probably going to see, especially in the fall, and ongoing until election year next year. Stay strong, people. Please. God bless. Happy homestead.